Empyre is the hot new cosmic Marvel event that will be taking over in, well, whenever new comics start coming out again. But until then, how did we get to this point? Well, for that we have the Road to Empyre, #1. Let's hop on in together and find out what happens next. Well, now this is interesting. This Road to Empyre one-shot is actually a continuation of the Meet the Skrulls miniseries from not too long ago. Don't know what it was about? Well, the comic tells you. Basically, a group of Skrull sleeper agents had come to Earth to live in suburbia as a normal American family so they could get closer to a corporation that was building a device that would be able to reveal Skrulls. It's kind of like that show The Americans, but for the Marvel Cosmic set, and apparently things got pretty raw and real by the end. The father was killed by their handler, and one of the daughters got taken captive and experimented on. What's left of the family had stayed behind to dig through the wreckage of Project Blossom, and they end up finding something rather interesting. It seems that the Kree had gotten their hands on a very interesting piece of cosmic history. You see, as Mama Skrull explains, the Kree Skrull War goes all the way back to the very beginning, to back before when the Skrulls weren't even a warlike people. In fact, they were a peaceful, pacifist race who got people to join their empire by giving them amazing technology and uplifting them. They had a pretty good deal going for a little bit, that is of course until they reached a planet called Hala, home to the ancient Kree people as well as their neighbor species, the Kotati. The Skrulls had no idea who to uplift, and because of that they thought it would be a grand idea to have a little contest, take a bunch of each species, drop them on a moon, and see who built the better society first. The Kree ended up getting dropped on Earth's moon where they built a giant city, and the Kotati on the other hand, being sentient plant creatures who communicated telepathically, made a beautiful garden. Morag, the leader of the ancient Kree, so fearing that he would lose this battle, decided, we might as well just wipe out all of the Kotati, and then while we're at it and got a good murder boner on, let's wipe out the Skrulls too. And thus begun the Kree Skrull War, which would rage on for, well, a really long time. In fact, it would turn into one of those Hatfield and McCoy-style feuds where they would just keep wronging each other over and over again. Now, the Skrull sleeper agent family stops off at a motel for a little bit to try and refuel and track down where the Kree might very well have gone. The problem is, they have no orders, and they're basically just doing this all on their own. It's here, too, one of the daughters, fearing the horrors of war, asks to be told the story of the great cosmic Madonna, the Messiah, the Savior. And for that we flash back once again. It seems that there was still a contingent of pacifist Krees who were forced deep underground by their new warlike cousins. It's there they actually found another surviving contingent of Kotati. These two races teamed up, and the pacifist Kree, feeling bad about the sins of their forefathers, decided to take the Kotati all over the universe and plant them in more fertile grounds. One of those grounds just so happening to be Earth. That means when swordsman Clint Barton, Hawkeye's adopted circus dad, died while on an important mission, he was fused with one of the Kotati. He then also banged one out with Mantis of the Guardians of the Galaxy, who just so happened to be the fabled celestial Madonna, and together they had a kid named Sequoia. This kid, who was basically a space Jesus, would end up catching the ire of Thanos. They'd fight for a little bit, and then he'd just kind of disappear to try and repair a bunch of damage that Thanos caused. Now, back with the Skrull family, a mysterious blue-skinned Kree agent blows up the motel they were hiding out in. This is pretty bad, but one of the daughters was able to intercept a message from, get this, Hulkling. We as the reader know he was recently just named the new leader of the Skrull people, but these guys in the field don't know that just yet. In fact, they think that he sold them out for his Kree half because, well, he's both, as they go on to explain. You see, the original Captain Marvel, a Kree by the name of Mar-Vell, had been taken to the Skrull homeworld by Kl'rt the Super Skrull. There, he fell in love with the then Skrull Emperor's daughter, and together they too banged out a child. His name was Prince Doric, and he was whisked away to Earth by one of his mother's handmaidens, where he was raised to believe that he was a mutant. He'd become one of the founding members of the Young Avengers, go on many fun adventures, and even fall in love with his boyfriend Wiccan. Now, the Skrull family manages to track back the Kree assassin to his place, and they have a long conversation about whether or not the girls are ready to finally get their hands dirty and take a life, even though this person is probably responsible for the death of their father too. But wait, we're not quite quite done with the history lesson just yet, because believe it or not, there was actually a peace between the Kree and the Skrull once upon a time, but for that, we gotta tell the story of Raxor and Beldam. If you remember Marvel Incoming from not too long ago, we had actually seen these characters again. Basically, they were really strong fighters for their respective armies. They were present at the trial of the Phoenix. At first, they hated each other and wanted nothing more than to kick each other's asses, but then the Fantastic Four and the Inhumans got involved, and so they briefly teamed up only to discover that they actually made a wicked awesome team. And because by this point, the Watcher had gotten involved and said whoever won between them in a fight would be the real winner of the Kree Skrull War, but seeing as they worked side by side, the Watcher just called it a truce, which was pretty great for the two races. Too bad it was totally built on a lie, and the Fantastic Four and the Inhumans actually totally took a fall in the name of a greater good. Now, as the comic finally begins to wind down, Mama Skrull kicks down the door to the assassin's apartment, only to realize that he's sitting and enjoying dinner with his own family, and that to murder him right now wouldn't send a great message. Although maybe she won't have to, because this guy ends up playing the rest of the recording that they intercepted from Prince Doric, or should I say Emperor Doric now, of both the Kree and Skrull races. Yeah, wouldn't you know, these two warring empires are now actually one big super empire, and their new emperor is telling them all to ride to Earth for the last great battle, where they will together wipe out their true enemy, humankind. Damn it, it's always humankind, I tell ya. And so that was Road to Empire, the Kree Skrull War #1, everybody, and I gotta say, this ended up being a really pleasant surprise here. On one hand, it's incredibly educational, whether you've never read a comic before and want to get up to speed before the new event, or if you're a dyed-in-the-wool comic fan like me and honestly needed to be reminded of a lot of shit that happened in the Kree Skrull War. The art team totally works their ass off, and I love that every flashback is distinct and interesting in its own way. Also, if you were a fan of Meet the Skrulls, then this is automatically a must-read because it's the continuation of that story. The only real problem, and this is completely out of the hands of this book, is that I'm so excited for Empire now, and there's no telling when it's actually gonna come out. Overall, though, I'd give this an 8.5. Really solid.